Brilliant. Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you very much for joining. Just so you know, the plan for today will be to spend the next sort of 45 minutes introducing you to visual analytics with Tableau, and to spend a good bit of the time that we have showing you how our gold partner, the Information Lab, perceive best practice analytics within the context of some insurance use cases, spanning renewals progress analysis through to fraud detection self-service analytics. We'll then use the remaining time for some Q&A for our panelists, and please do feel free to use the chat function throughout to ask any questions you have, and we'll either answer those as we go, or we can cover those answers in the Q&A section a little bit later on. So by way of introduction, my name is Hugo Lloyd, and I'll be hosting today's webinar on behalf of Tableau. I'm an account manager for insurance companies and have worked with insurers of all shapes and sizes. In my 2.5 years stint at both Salesforce, where I supported the enterprise insurance team in pre-sales, through to my more recent position at Tableau, where I manage our commercial insurance business. I'm joined today by the Information Lab, a gold partner of Tableau's, who have both expertise from experience of working on the ground within the insurance industry and the technical know-how to deliver on the demo content you will see later in the session today. But I'll let Josh give the full intro to the Information Lab a little bit later. So from the Information Lab, we have today Josh Henderson as the lead account manager for insurance, Carl Alchin, who's not only a Tableau genius and Zen master, but is also a subject matter expert on the insurance industry and has helped form our point of view for today. And we've also got Michael McFadden, who brings some significant experience from his days in insurance, as well as being the brains behind today's demo. So welcome and thank you for joining me. I'd like to just kick off today's call by introducing some research that was published in the last couple of weeks and is our most up-to-date view and understanding of the data and analytics landscape within the UK and Europe. So this research looks at how being data-driven benefits you, your team, and your business. To gather these insights, we commissioned the independent global public opinion company YouGov, who surveyed over 3,500 senior managers across the UK, the Netherlands, France, and Germany. We wanted to assess how people navigated the pandemic using data. And we've made some really interesting discoveries, especially about the link between data and business resilience. So our research found that 80% of data-led businesses believe they have a critical advantage during the pandemic. And ultimately, insights are defined as the capacity to gain an accurate and deep understanding of someone or something. Now, data is insights, and therefore, how could this not be a critical advantage in such uncertain times? And 76% of data-led companies will continue or increase their spending on data skills and training in the near future. Given the continued proliferation of insurtech businesses, it is critical for more traditional insurers to offer roles that meet the skills demands of the modern economy. Now, let's take a look at how businesses in the UK more specifically responded. So when we asked data-driven companies in the UK about the top benefits it gave their business, here's what they shared with us. So 71% of UK managers or managers in UK data-led businesses say they will ensure that more people across their organization have better access to data and the ability to analyze it as a part of their long-term plans. This clearly proves the value of such an investment. 43% of data-led UK businesses say data has helped their business be more agile during the pandemic. As your customers' expectations and needs continue to change more than ever, this is imperative to ensure you stay competitive in the market. And finally, 51% of data-driven UK companies say it helped them make strategic decisions faster during the pandemic. Organization-wide visibility of your business in terms of change is imperative to your continued success. So as you can see from these numbers and from the research, there are a lot of clear benefits to being data-driven. But the key takeaway here really is being that there are lessons here for everyone, no matter where you're at in your data journey. And with that, I would like to hand over to Josh.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, Hugo. Good morning, everyone. I'm Josh Henderson, and I'm an account manager with the Information Lab. I'll just quickly run through who the Information Lab is, and then we'll actually dive into the content. So, Till is the largest and longest standing Tableau Gold partner in the UK with offices across EMEA. So we help companies in a number of different ways by providing licenses, support, and enablement-based services to help the clients get the most out of the platform. So we work with a variety of different organizations in the insurance space, from insurance syndicates, reinsurers, and general insurers. And that, I would say, that doesn't just limit us to, say, the pricing team, but also other teams as well, like policy renewals, sales teams, actuaries, operations, just to name a few. We also help companies who have just started out in their Tableau journey. So they've maybe got their first few licenses, or they're considering Tableau, all the way to very advanced users of the solution that have enterprise-wide deployments. But let's focus on why we're here today. I just want to set the scene for you here. This picture looks like something from a bygone era, or a scene from Mad Men. But back in the day, these scenes were commonplace. These typing pools were made up of skilled teams that made sense of notes from across the business to create professional documents. And it reached a point where typing skills were taught in schools to feed the demand for skilled people who could operate this type of technology. So this is miles away from your everyday experience, at least I hope so, and deliberately so. But let's take a step back and use an example that we believe is similar in the magnitude to what could be achieved with visual analytics. We need to reset our thinking. So this typewriter was at the center of the process. Only trained people had the skills and the knowledge to operate this type of technology. And most great innovations follow the same pattern. So what happened to typing pools, and why do they no longer exist? So there was a technical evolution. The personal computer allowed many people to experiment. Now, the outputs may look similar to the typewriter, but it had the flexibility and, more importantly, undo. The personal computer changed the production of text from an activity that was performed by just specialists to one where everyone can manipulate language. It went from being technology-centric to people-centric. And this is the key distinction. And we've seen a similar shift when it comes to analytics. So in the past, only experts were able to effectively use data to answer questions, to drive the business forwards. It was technical, complicated, and architecture-heavy process that favored developers, IT, and engineers. See, many people wanted access to analytics, but not many could. See, Tableau has been at the forefront of changing that. Democratizing analytics is about vastly increasing the overlap of those users who want to be able to analyze their data and those who can. This is our goal, to help companies become data-driven organizations. Our best chances of doing it are by putting more intuitive, powerful, fast analytical tools in the hands of everyday people. And that's exactly what Tableau is all about. It delivers the power to ask why, not once, but over and over again. Insight comes not from the first answer to the first question, but from the third, the fourth, the fifth, and so on. Thinking is slow, but seeing is fast. We experience the world visually. If we can put data into a form that our visual system can make sense of, we can essentially harness that power. See, our brains are wired to notice variances in things that are presented in front of us. People process numbers slowly and ineffectively. However, seeing is almost instantaneous. We detect patterns immediately. So, it's Wednesday morning, a quick game for everyone. How many nines are there on this screen? I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to get the answer, starting from now. So no doubt, those of you who are on the call today, you probably get spreadsheets, so you're probably quite good at this in your everyday jobs. But we can make this easier by introducing a pre-attentive attribute. This means something your brain processes visually before you've even thought about it. In this case, color. The visual cortex can detect color. The power of visual analysis is in front of you and it's working with your ability to count. The answer is there are 11. There are 11 nines on this screen. So we've discussed the past, and by giving the power to the people, Tableau has revolutionized data analytics. But now let's look towards the future. See, we believe every company is a data company. And there are more people than ever that need access to data to make decisions, better decisions, and faster decisions. That means every person is a data person. All of you on this session today, no matter your job title, your role, all of you are data people. And that's why our mission is to help people see and understand their data. And it's never been more important. All of you have more data, more than ever before, and it is coming in faster. It's more diverse, and the need to analyze it has never been more critical, especially in these uncertain times. So, what are we doing with our customers? How can this inspire you? Now, we are helping solve all host of different challenges that you're familiar with. But if I'm being perfectly honest, there's many that you won't be. Our customers first get into Tableau to address one particular problem in one particular area, but they quickly find that their imaginations are fired and many more use cases emerge. It's really, really common, speaking candidly, in my everyday job. And this is the magic that happens when you put the capability in the hands of those users who understand the data. So let's dive into some examples. So here's a few examples just to get started. So we believe a huge leap can be made by data literate people when they have the capability and the business experience and the opportunity to do things fast. We believe in enabling those who understand the context of the data and letting them find the story that helps them rapidly make the best decision. No matter how good a dashboard might be, if it is delivered slowly, let's say a week or a month later than it's needed, it is no good. Speed and ease are essential. Putting analytics in everyday users is one of the most important opportunities for a business shift this century. Now let's dive into a Tableau demonstration to show how this works in practice. With that, I'm going to pass you over to Michael to run through an insurance use case that he's worked with in the past, and we'll take it from there. Michael, over to you.
Hi everyone, my name's Michael, and as Josh says, I'm going to talk you through a few examples of dashboards that have been pre-built by by the Information Lab in Tableau, and then I'll talk you through a use case that I may face or may have faced in the past. So just a quick introduction for myself. I'm a trainer and consultant at the Information Lab and have been for the last 3 or so years. And before that, I spent about 5 years working in insurance, mainly in the claims department. So my specialism is in claims and more specifically credit hire. But what we have here are some dashboards that can be made available to you. And I'm just going to have a quick scroll through just to see if there's anything that jumps out to you before I go into the specifics. But we have here dashboards on broker portfolios, white space and health, operational reporting, financial overview. We also have renewal progress analysis, policy analysis, and insurance price analysis, to name a few. The first one we're going to take a quick look at is the broker portfolio. And often these dashboards are going to be very high level. So we can see across the top some high level figures for Gottlieb and Vume. We have the gross written premium, live policies. We have loss ratio, brokerage, renewal rate, variance, and technical adequacy across the top. And it allows us to see the change versus the previous year in this example. Down the left-hand side, we can see we're currently looking at 2019 in Q3. And with Tableau, we're able to change that around to see any specific year or quarter if we want to, as that's how this has been set up. But of course, the possibilities are endless here in what we look at. But for now, we're looking at the top 10 brokers for this year and quarter. And we can see that the top 10 brokers that we have for gross written premium make up 76% of our total gross written premium. And of that, we have 12% are being made up by Gottlieb and Hume. We could change this if we like to see the top 20 and see how that makes up the percentage gross written premium. And the top 20 actually make up 93%. So it allows us to get a very quick insight across how important our top 10 or 20 or even 30, if we want to go to that level, brokers are. And then we can get specifics on a specific broker if we want. So looking at this first chart here, we can see that the gross written premium for the top 10 year on year, client group has actually gone down from the previous year. And so maybe that's a broker in this instance that we want to focus on. So we can select that broker. And we can see that that has highlighted that broker across the dashboard. So we can now see where they sit in terms of the number of policies, but we can also get a little bit more information about their loss ratio across the last 5, 2, or 1 years, and their brokerage, renewal rate, and technical adequacy down here at the bottom. So this is great as a quick overview, but maybe we want to see how they benchmark against the other brokers in these figures that we see across the top. So selecting on benchmarking here in the top right-hand corner, that brings through that client group and shows us for 2019 in Q3, which has been highlighted, the same figures that we saw previously. And down here, we can see how they benchmark against other brokers. So we still have this gross written premium because that's the important one in this instance. And we can see that they sit in 5th. But we can also see that they sit in 5th in the live policies. But for the renewal rate and for the loss ratio and brokerage, they actually fall off quite a lot. So they're 19th here in the renewal rate, 16th in loss ratio, and 16th in brokerage. So maybe this is something that we would then take away and investigate further. But this dashboard really gives us a good overview of our broker portfolio. The next dashboard I just want to show you very quickly is the renewal rate, the renewal progress analysis. And so here we're looking at a specific date. At the moment, we've timestamped this to the 23rd of October. So we're able to choose a specific date to get a specific point in time. And we can see that 84% of our gross written premium is due to expire in the next 29 days. So of course, that's not a good thing. But this dashboard allows us to highlight the areas that are important to us. So first of all, we can see down here at what state these policies are at. So as I mentioned previously, the 84% are expiring. And then the remainder are all renewing just at different stages. So we have 12% in the quote stage, 2.8% in signing, and 0.3% to be authorized. The chart up here in the top right allows us to see a timeline. And of course, with this, the yellow section is the area that is expiring. And so what we're hoping is that over time, as this moves towards the renewal period, this yellow section will diminish and hopefully get to 0 by the time we get to the renewal period. But it allows us to track it over time. And then finally, down in the bottom right, we have a table of our policies that are being shown here. So depending on what we are looking for, we can first of all see that the highest amount of gross written premium in one of our policies here is 11 million. It's due to expire in 16 days. And so maybe we want to focus on that. Alternatively, maybe we want to focus on areas that are expiring in a much or expiring much sooner. So here we've currently got this set to 7 days, and so highlighted will be any policies that are coming up in the next 7 days. And we can see here that this policy has 2 days remaining, but it's currently renewing. So maybe this is something you may want to highlight and push through to try and get authorized before that time period is up. So in terms of a quick overview of a couple of dashboards, that's it. But then what if those dashboards, although they give us a lot of information, they're not giving us exactly the information that we need? So here, what I have for you is a insurance fraud overview. And it's just showing us an overview of our claims split by whether or not they've been identified as fraud or not. And this is currently being hosted on our server. And what I can show is how you may take this on and do the analysis yourself. So in my everyday job, before I joined the information lab, one of the jobs that I had was as a claims handler. And so being able to see something like this would have been very useful in the sense that the bit that's important to me here is this bottom left section, which shows us a bar chart of, in red, the claims that have been identified as fraud, and in grey, the claims that, or the remaining claims that have not been identified as fraud. And so, of course, it's important to see that within the fleet description, 18% of the claims have been identified as fraud. And I can see the area and I can see that over time, but maybe it's important to me to understand that a little bit more so that I can actually pass on and have the non-fraudulent claims investigated further a little bit more specifically. And so there's about 1,000 claims here and in this section. And so how do I go about doing that and identifying areas that I want to narrow that down to? So with Tableau, we have web edit. So this dashboard has obviously been built for us by an analyst in our hypothetical scenario. We can select edit up here in the top right. And now we can see how this dashboard was built, but we can also start to make changes to it or adapt it further. So we're looking at the fraudulent claims within the fleet description. So let's open up a new tab. And now down the left-hand side, we can see all of our fields. And the demonstration I'm going to give here is for someone that maybe hasn't really ever used Tableau before, but to show how easy it can be to analyze and highlight specific areas. So the first thing we want to do is to look for that description. And with Tableau, we can just drag and drop that onto our filters. And we can find those fleet claims. So we're going to filter out, so we're just looking at fleet claims. We also want to, for now, just look at the fraudulent claims because we want to identify areas to look at, and then we can look at our non-fraudulent claims. And we'll get a list of claims at the end that we can then pass on for further analysis. So if I bring in our claim ID here, and I take a count distinct of that claim ID, and I'm just very quickly going to color that as well. So at the moment, we can see we've got 75 claims that have been identified as fraud. They're the same 75 that we highlighted in the previous section. But now we're able to investigate this further and split it down in different ways. So as a claims handler, I may want to know what type of fraud this has been identified as. So maybe we first start looking at the category. Make that a little bit larger so you can all see. And we can see here, of those claims that we've identified, the vast majority of them seem to be organized fraud. So that's interesting because, of course, for those of you that don't know, organized fraud will be things that has been premeditated or planned. And opportunistic fraud is something where someone who is generally innocent may be taking an opportunity that arises. So it's not premeditated, but if they see an opportunity to make a false personal injury claim, for example, they may go ahead and do that. So if we break this down further to fraud types, just by dragging and dropping the fraud type on there, we can see that the induced claims are the ones that stand out the most. There is also phantom hire, which may be something we want to look into as well, because these two can go hand in hand. But for now, the induced claim seems to be the one that we want to highlight. And so what I would do at this stage, very simply, is just give this tab a name so that we know what we've done previously. So we'll call this fraud by type. I'll attempt to spell fraud correctly. And so now what we can do is duplicate this tab. So we can take what we've done, almost freeze it at that stage here in this tab so that we can go back and review it later. But now we can start to dive into finding areas for this induced fraud. So on this new tab, I'm going to select and keep only. And now we're just looking at those induced claims. So from this point now, I need to start looking at or cutting my data in different ways to see if there's an area that stands out. So the first thing I might do for an induced claim is look at the circumstances to see if there's a specific type of induced claim that's coming through. Hopefully you can all see there that changing lane is much more disproportionate to the others. And so changing lane might be something that we want to highlight as an area when we go and look at our non-fraudulent claims. So what I would generally do then with sort of very little knowledge of Tableau, I can then duplicate that again and repeat this process a few times. So we've now got our claims by circumstances. We can remove that from our duplicated tab. And we can maybe look to see, okay, well, induced fraud seems to be coming up quite a lot and the circumstances seem to be the same. So maybe there's a specific organization that could be involved. And of course, it may be coincidence, but it allows us to quickly understand that. And we could find nothing. Alternatively, we could see something like this where organization 1 seems to stand out a little bit. And so once again, we look at our claims by organization. We take that and we can duplicate that. So we've identified the circumstances and the organization. And once again, we duplicate. And now maybe because we've identified this, the circumstances seem to be quite similar. The organization seems to be coming up quite a lot. If there's some sort of fraud ring or some area that we're looking to focus on, it might be there's a specific geographical area that's heavily involved. So we can, again, remove that, bring in another geographical field, and once again, sort it. And again, we've got something that seems to stand out. So Glasgow and Bradford are the two areas that seem to stand out a little bit. The number of claims is quite low. So these are all 1s and these are 2s and 3s. But when you're dealing with fraudulent claims, 3 or 4 claims in a specific area with a specific type, with specific circumstances, is something that could be quite important to look into. So what I've done so far is very basic in terms of the chart types that I've used, the filtering that I've done, the way that I've done it. But it shows that although you can build out very complex and very useful dashboards in Tableau, someone with not so much knowledge in Tableau itself, but someone that wants to get quick insight can go ahead and do that. So now, what do we do with this information? We've identified that the claims by circumstances seem to be prominent here in changing lane. There seems to be this organization that's involved, potentially, and we seem to see that there's an area that comes up quite often. What would we then go ahead and do with this? Well, there's lots of options with Tableau that I'm not going to go into in too much depth, but we could start by bringing in our claims. Again, in fact, let's bring it in here. And this time we want to look at we still want to look at the fleet claims. So we're going to narrow this number down. So it's currently about 34,000 claims. We can narrow that down now to about 1,100 fleet claims. Of those, we can highlight the claims that haven't been identified as fraud just yet. And then from there, we can start to bring in the things that we're already aware of. So if we bring in the circumstances, and we want the changing lane claims, we can bring in the organization that we've highlighted as well. And finally, we can bring in the area. So again, very simply, using combination of filters, but we've allowed ourselves to find these areas and these filters to use by visually showing in a simple bar chart across multiple different areas very quickly. We've now got this list of claims, so I can change that instead to a list. And now we could then use a supplementary data source in Tableau to investigate these further. We could use the data that we already have to continue our analysis in exactly the same way, but now specific to these claims that haven't yet been identified as fraud. Alternatively, we could export them and take them out to send off to someone either by email or in a CSV so that they can investigate them in our own systems further. Or alternatively, we can use the charts that we've created. Maybe if we had used something a little bit more complex in terms of the chart types, we could then drag these in to a dashboard and build a new dashboard. And what I find when I'm doing this sort of work, as Josh mentioned, when you have a dashboard, it often prompts more questions. Those questions prompt this kind of analysis, and then this kind of analysis will then lead to building a new dashboard. And then when someone else looks at that, they repeat the process again, and it allows you to very quickly analyze and cover lots of area when it comes to your data. So in terms of the demo, that's it from me. I'll leave the chat open to any questions that you might have until we get to the Q&A. So feel free, if you have anything sort of burning in the back of your head at the moment for questions, to put those into the chat. But for now, I'll pass back to Josh to see out the rest of the session.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael.
So just quickly before we cut back to Josh, there's a question from Mark in the Q&A for Hugo, actually. So the statistics you mentioned earlier, Hugo, was that overall business from those YouGov statistics, or was that specific to the insurance industry?
Yeah, hi Mark. I think I did put an answer in there. You might not have seen it, Carl, but yeah, no, the answer was that the research was done across multiple industries, including the insurance industry. They were in there, in and amongst those companies, but the 3,500 businesses was sort of multi-industry research. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Michael. I do appreciate that. That was a good example. So I've also gathered some other examples that I think will fit well within this demo session. So we've seen a few very specific insurance examples, but what about other examples? So I think you would agree with me that arming your sales teams with actual insights would improve their performance. So Tableau is actually used within insurance sales teams to spot opportunities like the likes of cross-selling by finding commonly owned products by certain demographic and segment data. So giving sales teams better insights allows them to uncover more opportunities. It's as simple as that. The platform essentially lowers the barrier to entry so anyone at any skill level can arm themselves and just get the job done, ultimately driving the bottom line. Customer contact centers are the touch point that make a real difference, especially in these chaotic times. Which customers are having problems? Who needs intervention? Where are my customer journeys dropping out? What are the moments that matter? Tableau is able to effectively dissect complex and convoluted data sets into actionable insights. So you'll have a single source of truth for your business. Just as a side note, you can, for those of you who have not used Tableau before, you can connect to multiple different data sources and then connect together to get one visual analysis dashboard. So PwC published some new research about the top survey trends through to 2022, and I think they're quite pertinent for this presentation, as Tableau touches on each of these trends. So achieve cost efficiency. Now, there are many examples of this, but just one example that comes to mind and how Tableau can address this is by analyzing claims data. So let's say reviewing unprofitable policies, and then by understanding those policies better, adjust a premiums based on exposure, such as home insurance in floodplain areas. Winning the war for talent. This is quite a big one. So get this. LinkedIn scraped their network, and that's over 660 million professionals and over 20 million jobs to reveal their top 15 top in-demand skills for 2020. So analytical reasoning came in as the 6th most in-demand skill. So as we've pretty much been hitting home, every job we believe is a data job. And as Hugo mentioned earlier, the insurtech businesses are on the rise, and tomorrow's professionals will be looking at the most innovative companies. Those who fail to innovate are destined to fall behind, especially in this era where businesses grow and fall so quickly. Manage regulatory pressures. This is an interesting one, honestly. So Tableau has we haven't seen this today, but maybe Carl could probably touch on it potentially later. I've just literally thrown him under the bus here. Tableau has a data preparation tool that can effectively build a workflow that can be automated for regulatory reporting. So by building this workflow and building a set of rules, it reduces labor-intensive tasks and repetitive tasks, such as, say, sense checking data. Let's say you're looking over your book of business against your regulatory requirements. It can automate that sort of process. This can then be hosted in a centralized governed environment. So it's good news for the compliance teams. So we've seen some examples of Tableau in the wild, but how do companies actually benefit from the platform? So Aon have cut lead times in their survey analysis from months to hours, bringing in complex data streams which can be analysed on demand for their teams to use. Just a side note, Tableau is used, another way that we see commonly that Tableau is used is for our clients to open up their data assets to their customers, allowing their customers to self-serve. This reduces a lot of friction when customers need and request data quite over and over again. So Tableau has actually allowed the likes of Aon to achieve this through its data sharing capabilities. So you just saw earlier, Michael was using the web edit functionality. Lots of customers actually use that and open it to their particular client base. Obviously with governance built in, so clients can only see what they're allowed to see, but it's a really nice way to reduce that friction for customers.
As previously mentioned, governance at scale is critical for insurers in such a regulated industry. So this example is actually taken from the YouGov research that we spoke about at the start of this, where Swiss Life unified their analytics tooling across the enterprise to ensure everyone works from the same governed environment to generate their insights. Their Chief Data Officer, Emmanuel Dubois, understands the importance of a common platform to foster collaboration and improve those workflow efficiencies that Josh just mentioned, while also prioritizing data governance. So with that sort of draws the presentation to a close. We're now going to move into some Q&A for the panel. I know Carl has got a question lined up, and there might be a couple more out there. But if anyone has any questions, as it's slightly trickier to unmute everyone, it would be easier if you could type your questions into the Q&A box, into the Q&A chat function, and we'll go through those questions and happy to sort of facilitate a conversation. If anyone would like to come off of mute, I think I have that power. So please just type into the box and let me know also.
Cool. Well, maybe we handle that first question from Jay. And I don't have a cloud-based source that I use, actually. It's really bad. Maybe Google Sheets and Google Drive would be my equivalent of that. But I don't have anything else because I still live in Microsoft SQL Server, which is probably a terrible thing to say these days, as my common data source, unless I start accessing client data, which probably isn't appropriate. So let's not go there for that one. So I can always go and have a look at Google Drive. But the first question, and it's a common question that we had come through from Jay, which is, well, what data does Tableau actually connect to? And there's three main sources that we think of for that. Tableau, obviously, because it's pretty much tool agnostic for the data that it sits over, connects to three different things. The file types, as Jay mentioned, so the likes of our Excel spreadsheets, CSVs, text files, all of those things that are kind of commonly sitting on our machines and the tools that we're using every day in team drives. Certainly my team at my previous insurer, we were absolutely swimming in that kind of stuff. We've then got connections into bigger hard-hitting tools in terms of heavier databases and server-based sources. And as Jay highlights, lots of those are now coming into both on-premise solutions like SQL Server, etc., where my own organization is hosting that infrastructure, actually, as well as having cloud-based sources. So that's where somebody else is running that infrastructure. So sometimes we have to go through that connectivity process to make sure that we can have access to that. Tableau's trying to make that seamless as possible. It's paired up with most of the major data sources that we have out there. So you just need to have credentials and logins for that. That authentication often happens within your browser. But what if Tableau doesn't have a tool that's specific either to your business or to your industry? Well, in that case, Tableau's opened the door to what is called extensions. So it's a Tableau term for how we can go and connect to sources that are that little bit more niche. And those extensions can be developed by yourselves or by third-party partners, etc. And there's lots of kind of solutions and sources out there. But really what Tableau is doing is once it sucks in the data And so we're looking for data in columns and rows. You're then going to have all of that rich functionality that Michael has actually demonstrated today, either developing that within Tableau Desktop, so that's sitting on our computers by dragging and dropping exactly as what you saw today through that web edit capability as well. So they're the different elements that we have within that.
Thanks, Carl. I have a question here from Adele. She's asked, so she said, hi, very excited by the claims dashboards and insight that can be derived. Do any templates exist for this or similar? How detailed was the data required for this? Looks very detailed. Is it possible to collate data from multiple sources easily? Is there any training available for this? Thanks.
Yes, and yes. So how detailed is the data? Tableau kind of likes the more granular, the better. Hopefully you saw from Michael, as he was dragging in some of what we class as the measures, so either sums or counts, we're actually seeing that Tableau is trying to aggregate the data up. So for example, if I'm counting policies, I don't want to have to go and read through and count them by hand individually. So Tableau is going to try and do that and answer that first question for us. So how many policies do we have overall? We can then break that down through the categorical data, or Tableau class of dimensions. So we then go and break that down by the broker, for example, as Michael shared as well. So how granular does the data have to be? The answer is, well, it doesn't. But the more granular we have that data, the more questions and the deeper we can kind of get stuck into those questions that we actually want to answer. So for the claims work or complaints data that I've typically had, we kind of want one row. So almost a row acts as an observation in our data set. We want one row per observation, per claim, per complaint, because that way we can go all the way from the highest level of just counting the overall numbers into which department, who was the claims handler, where did that policy originally get sold from the broker. The richer that data, the more we can go and interrogate that to go and find the answers that actually exist within there.
Brilliant. I hope that answered your question, Adele. Question from Mark Elliott. With multiple source systems we may use to obtain data from, updating at different times, how do you ensure continuity and understanding for user community on what data is up to date in any given dashboard so it is not confusing for the user?
Yeah, awesome question and a kind of constant challenge we come across. Michael, have you got any tricks for this before I just reel off another answer?
I mean, it does depend entirely on your own setup. I think a very simple answer is that within the dashboard, you can have a field that highlights a refresh time. So in the simplest sense, to make sure that you know that you're always looking, or what you're looking at, or that you're looking at the same thing, you can input your refresh time as a field in your data source and have that showing somewhere on your dashboard or on your series of dashboards. I think that's probably the best way to show how. When it comes through to how to actually keep it refreshing at the same time, I think that depends where your data is coming from. So if you're doing your refreshes in SQL, then the data is going to be based on that refresh time. If you've got your data source published to Tableau Server, then you can use Tableau Server to refresh your data sources, so you can know that they're all being refreshed at the same time there. Alternatively, you can use something like Tableau Prep, which, as Carl is the expert in that, I'll let him sort of take it on because I'm sure he's planning on mentioning that anyway. But yeah, I think it really depends on sort of where your data is coming from initially. But in terms of a really simple solution, you can have that field there and show that somewhere in your dashboards.
Yeah, I think that the time question is always an interesting one. And working at a multinational insurer and a bank, it was always the case that we're getting different data sources with different times. Tableau doesn't even have to be built into the data source. It will show you where that data has last been refreshed. Now, to kind of Mark's challenge over the top of that is maybe we're getting different refresh times from different sources. And that's where I'd really go for Michael's guidance of actually let's have a data refresh time in each of those data sources. So capturing a now calculation or a today calculation to go and see when that was actually pulled in to make sure that's being played back to the user. With the interactivity we have with Tableau, so by hovering over any of the marks we're interested in, what we see is we've got a tooltip that pops up. That's normally where I'm putting that information, because as soon as I'm going to go and look at that, I'm going to go and see that pop up. Yes, I might have that overall time. I'm going to go and hold that up in the top right-hand corner so it's always visible for when that data was last refreshed. So again, this was a constant challenge in the complaints analysis that we were doing. So having that latest view of when did that data set last get refreshed. What's actually being built into Tableau Server a lot more now is almost that lineage of data. So seeing when a data extract has failed, and Tableau Server is now kind of showing at the top of the dashboard when you actually go into it, or the analysis when you go into it, the fact that an extract is refreshed. So use the data with care. So we're starting to see that bubble up into the UI a lot more to go and safeguard people from making decisions on slightly offset data to avoid exactly those situations. But that complexity has always been there. And Michael mentioned Tableau Prep, one of my favorite subjects. I've just finished writing a book on it, so hence why the guys are laughing at me right now for this. But it's a tool that helps us go and combine those multiple data sets together. We can go and pull in SQL servers to those sneaky models and Excel files that are kicking around to some of those cloud sources that Jay was mentioning as well. We can go and draw those different sources together, which ultimately allows us to go and work just with these one nice data sources to allow my user to just think about what's in the data set and not have to worry about handling all of that complexity of where it is. So if we've got complex data prep, Tableau's got a product that's bundled together with most of the common license type, or we can go and tackle that through serving that up in the server so my user doesn't even have to think about that, which makes life a lot easier for them.
Brilliant. Thanks. Mark's response to that quickly was we're already working with some prep stuff. So that's great. Thanks. I mean, I guess in terms of like that visibility piece, Carl, you sort of touching on the data management side of Tableau when you talk about data cataloging, data lineage, and that might be, I mean, it might be something that if Mark's already using data prep and he's looking at sort of individual user visibility and everyone knowing that the data source that they're working from is the most trusted, most up-to-date source that hasn't necessarily got any warnings or signals saying it's actually not correct, it might be something worth looking at as well.
Yeah, I think the lineage piece is a really interesting addition for the Tableau server. So for anyone who's not had the chance to look at that, when I go and publish a data source or a workbook to the Tableau server, I get where that's being pulled from. So not just what data sources come from within inside the Tableau server, but actually which SQL server that's actually come from as well. So if I need to go and make changes, and let's face it, in complex organizations, different data sources are used in different ways and across different workbooks, trying to keep track of that stuff can be really painful. If you're documenting it, who's actually really reading that stuff? Not as many people as they should be. So how do you kind of stay abreast of that? Well, with the lineage, we're actually able to go and click on that server source, let's say it's SQL Server, and see where else those tables are being used in other workbooks. So we know if we need to go and make any changes, we're seeing how that's being played out. So Tableau is building that in the background for us with this data management add-on that's really helping us go and kind of wrap our arms around this by answering the questions that we're likely to come up to make sure that we're kind of handling the refreshing data sets, those changing data sets, you know, if there is a failure, who's it actually really affecting, so we can go and communicate that stuff properly.
Brilliant. One question, I think this is for you, Michael, from Stephen. Hi, are the Tableau workbook examples you demoed available to download? I know you mentioned they were available online. Do you want to cover that? I think you're on mute.
Sorry, my mistake. Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure whether they're available to download. It might actually be better for Josh to answer this. We have got them available for people to view online. If Josh isn't sure, we can definitely find that out for you and see if we can get them available to download. I believe they're made on dummy data, so it should be fine. But yeah, it's definitely something we can take away and look into for you.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is I'll share my details, and anyone who requests the content, just contact me directly, and I'll just quickly review it and send it over.
I'll be in touch with Stephen, I guess, then. He's a customer. So, Steve, I'll pick this up with you afterwards. Brilliant. I can't see any more questions at this point. Adele just says, thank you very much. Much appreciated. All seems to be good. Are there any other sort of questions or comments from the panel?
Hugo, there's a question about templates, and that's often something that comes up around how much does Tableau pre-prepare these kind of workbooks, so the things that we've seen from Michael. And it's an interesting one because Tableau Public is often how we go and share these things or see examples out in the real world. One of our colleagues, Chris Love, has an example of everyday dashboards where you can actually go and pick up other people's works that they've anonymized and download those useful views. If you get the data structure similar to what those dashboards have, you can actually just go and plug and play with them. So Tableau doesn't go down this full templated route, because really by exploring the data, and that's really Tableau's kind of key emphasis and how it differs from other tools, is we have that ability to explore as well as analyze. But having that ability to go and pick up work, you're going to go and ask your own questions very quickly. So very quickly, you can kind of take those templates, almost starting ideas. And as you've seen from Michael, building those individual charts, those individual elements don't take that long. So we can absolutely help you get going with that. But really, we're trying to get the individuals to go and work their way through the process. But where those examples do exist on Tableau Public, you can absolutely download them and plug and play if you want to. But again, data structure is often the major question behind that. And every organization differs, as per Mark's question, around the multiple data sources.
Yeah, and I would really sort of double down on that as well, that the templates are really, really useful for getting some ideas and to getting some inspiration. And they're obviously a very good starting point, but you'll very, very quickly find that you're wanting to build your own stuff. So I would take bits of each one. There's also different KPIs that people really want to focus on, and they're different across different companies as well. So taking the ideas, for example, from the benchmarking one about how you might benchmark against things, but the actual figures that you're benchmarking, or whether you're benchmarking policies, or if you're looking at claims, those sorts of things can change quite easily with the data sets that you're using. And so, yeah, I agree. These templates are available, but as Tableau is more of an analytics tool than a dashboarding tool, in my opinion, you're looking to find that really quick insight as well. And so I would try to focus on developing beyond the templates that you do find.
So I've just put a link to Everyday Dashboards actually in the chat. So if anyone wants to access that, it was also just Google Everyday Dashboards, it will come up. Hugo, what I will do, because Adele did mention training, let me just share my screen for a second, if that is okay.
Please do.
Okay. Right, so this is our meetup page. You just Google meetup and let's talk data. This is our office. Hey, what pre-COVID, as you can imagine, we've been a bit of trouble if we were doing it today. So let's talk data. So this is our meetup page where we have lots of different events associated with Tableau, and there's another solution we use which is called Alteryx. So there's tons of different free training. But what I want to show you for this, for those users who are actually just new, maybe haven't picked up Tableau before, and you're quite advanced users of the solution, every Thursday at 3 o'clock we run free training, and we run anywhere from 3 to 4 different sessions depending on expertise, so on and so forth. So I've just looked at the calendar, and on the 17th of December we run a Tableau Essentials training session. So for those of you who've never picked up Tableau before, just started Tableau journey, I'm sure Hugo's going to send a link where you can download a free trial of Tableau, but join us for this free Essentials training session where we'll guide you. Those of you who are more advanced down the Tableau journey, there's also tons of more intermediate and advanced content here. I would advise you just to go onto Let's Talk Data website, just have a look through the content. If you like something, then just register. We'll be in touch with registration details. It is completely free, even if you're not a customer of the Information Lab, or your customer Information Lab. It's a really, really great resource for you.
Yeah, and on that, Josh, I'm actually running one of the sessions on this Thursday. So if anyone's interested, quickly, the sessions for this Thursday are Tableau Desktop Essentials for Salesforce users. So that will show you how to connect to Salesforce data, but it's very similar for other cloud-based software. So if you're interested in that, we're also looking at level of detail calculations, which is a little bit more advanced, working with strings, and then we're also looking at Alteryx as well. But the thing that I wanted to highlight, which I will put a link for in the chat, is that we do now have a creator learning path as well. So you can see the Essentials session, but then also where that would lead to and the sort of things that you might want to go to from there. So where Josh is saying there's more advanced things, it gives you a little bit more guidance on what more advanced things you might want to look into. So I'll put a link for that into the chat in just a second.
Brilliant. Thanks, Michael. I'm conscious of time and that we're coming up to the hour. We've got 2 minutes. Should we just wrap up, Josh, unless there's any final comments that anyone wants to make? No? Brilliant. So just in conclusion, I guess, to everything that everyone's seen today, in terms of next steps, it's always good to have an action point at the end of a session like this. Your Tableau account manager will be in contact off the back of the call. So please do look out for an email or a call of some description. From then, we'd also love to hear your feedback from the session, and are happy to answer any follow-up questions that we haven't had a chance to cover today. Finally, if you do have a project in mind or are keen to bounce a few ideas past the Information Lab's consultants or expertise, as you can see, there's lots of them. We'd be happy to facilitate that conversation and get the ball rolling. So I think, we'll be in touch. Tableau will be in touch, and we'll also facilitate that conversation with the Information Lab. We work incredibly closely with them, so we'll be happy to do that as far as next steps go. But otherwise, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Thank you for your time. We are up to the hour, I think, on the dot, and thank you very much to all the panelists and presenters from today. It was really informative and really interesting.